Hi there, nice to be with you. Happy you could stick around.
1, 2, 3, kick! Come on, everybody. Clap your hands. Ooh, you're looking good. Are you having a good time? Yeah. I sure am.
Yes, indeed. You are looking good. I'm Ira Robbins, and this is a special episode of the Trouser Press Books podcast, recorded at Word Brooklyn on May 2nd. And it's a conversation between King Cal author Peter McDade and Semisonic drummer Jacob Slichter about the new book, King Cal. The introduction at the beginning is by Stephen Warren of Word Brooklyn.
Peter McDade spent 15 years traveling the highways of America as the drummer of the rock bands Uncle Green and 3 Pound Thrill, releasing a half dozen albums on various major and independent labels. Raised in New Jersey, he now lives with his family in Atlanta, where he teaches at Clark Atlanta University. King Cal is his third novel. The man to my right is the drummer for the band Semisonic and the author of So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star. He has written for the New York Times, has been a commentator on NPR's Morning Edition, and currently teaches creative nonfiction at Sarah Lawrence College. He also blogs about connections between music, writing, and other art forms at portablephilosophy.com. Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for Jacob Slichter and your headliner, Peter McDade!
Can we hear for the best introduction I've ever had? All right. Peter, we're going to...
Oh, you going to read?
Welcome to... Yeah.
You going to read?
Well, yeah, just going to give Peter a quick introduction. Welcome to Brooklyn.
Thank you.
Peter is the author of 3 novels. In addition to all his career as a rock drummer, he's the author of 3 novels: The Weight of Sound, Songs by Honeybird, and his recent release, King Cal. And Peter's going to read some from the book, and then we'll have some conversation, the two of us and maybe all of us. So,
all of us.
Here you go.
Hello, everybody.
Oh, yes.
Reading glasses. There's no shame, there's no shame. So our hero is Calvin, and Calvin is 22 and a singer-songwriter. And Calvin's day job involves working at a fast food place called Burger Buddies. And I'll just read from the beginning. The book starts and ends at 6 a.m. with Calvin's first drive-through order of the day. So I'll just start. This is Calvin's first order. There's always one waiting. Lights on, engine idling. Sometimes 10 minutes early, sometimes 5. Calvin studied this morning's first car through the closed-circuit monitor above the register, wondering what the driver is thinking about, trying to understand how their life has gotten to the point of being willing to waste some of their finite time sitting in a car, waiting for the Burger Buddies reader board to light up. Or are they really just thinking they're hungry, and this is the first place they found open, a modern hunter-gatherer waiting for a rabbit to hop into view. Even if he is ready early, Cal refuses to take that first order until the computer clock hits 6. There are rules in this universe that cannot be ignored. Welcome to Burger Buddies, may I take your order? It used to be 2 sentences, or at least a long sentence with a comma in the middle, but now it comes out as a single word. In theory, it's a question, but Calvin stopped bothering to phrase it like a question a long time ago. The people in their cars never listened anyway. On days when he was feeling especially rebellious, he spoke in gibberish, and the unseen customer always responded as if nothing was wrong. Everybody knows their role at the drive-thru, and everybody wants to think about that as little as possible. Today's first order comes through slurred and rushed. Maybe because it's 6 a.m., or maybe the guy is stoned or drunk, or maybe Calvin is so tired everything is going to sound fuzzy all day. After 2+ years and thousands of orders, his brain can still make out the words just fine. Sausage biscuit, no make it 2, and a Coke, a large Coke. Thousands of orders, really? The accusatory inner voice that has haunted him since puberty, ready to pounce on any possible misstatement, lives on inside his head. But yes, after more than 2 years of working here full-time, it has to be thousands. That makes taking orders at Burger Buddies one of the things he has done most in his life, up there with days wasted in school and hours playing piano. Calvin gives the total and walks to the drink station. Pulls a large cup out of the dispenser on the wall, fills it with Coke, sets it on the counter, and slides open the window. A red Volvo erratically stop-starts its way down the lane. When it finally arrives, window open and Pearl Jam blaring, the driver appears to be softly crying. Middle-aged, Buddy Holly glasses too small for his head, rumpled button-down shirt hanging loosely off his skinny frame. Oh, sad Pearl Jam fan. You relate that much to poor Jeremy? Or are you just having a crappy day already? 2 sausage biscuits gonna make things better? 1,000 calories gonna straighten out your life? Calvin hands Pearl Jam his Coke, takes a credit card, swipes and returns it, avoiding eye contact the whole time. Not out of politeness, just a desire not to start the day by watching a stranger cry any longer than he must. At least it's something else he can add to his list of things seen in the drive-thru. Couples fighting, couples making out, several men without pants, naked babies, more Confederate flags than he would have expected, even in Stone Mountain, more joints and open bottles than he could count. This is the 5th or 6th person he's seen crying, but the first adult man. Calvin's been working the morning shift for over a year, opening up with little Ron and Annie. Breakfast is slow enough that the 3 of them can manage until more people start clocking in at 10. Though sometimes there's a rush of customer that requires Big Ron, the morning manager, to reluctantly emerge from the safety of the back office. Annie, who runs the dining room register, has to be pushing 50, but her husband left her for their oldest daughter's best friend. So she's probably stuck at the job until she can retire, which seems like it's never going to happen. Calvin's done the math. How much Annie could possibly be saving towards what she would need to survive, even in some crappy tiny apartment, divided by how many more years she's likely to live. Little Ron looks to be around the same age, and while Calvin would never be put up with being called little, Ron seems like someone who spends his life avoiding any potential conflict. Calvin pops open a paper bag and heads down to the breakfast board to wait for little Ron to make sad Volvo's biscuits. Crying alone in my Volvo, crying in front of someone I don't know. The lines slide into his head. He puts them on repeat in his brain, slowing down and speeding up the syllables to see if the idea might fit on top of the music he wrote last night. How did I wind up here? Luckily, the music playing in the background at Burger Buddies does not interfere with the music in his head. It's the kind of generic classic stuff usually heard in elevators, aside from one terrible month when the store tried Top 40. Sales went down, and bland strings, easily ignored, returned. Sausage biscuits ready to roll, little Ron calls out, much too enthusiastically for 6 a.m. That's how you do it. Calvin wants to lean in close to Ron at moments like this. Close enough to tell him, in a whisper no one else can hear, how ridiculous it is for a middle-aged man to be that self-satisfied as his ability to slice open 2 biscuits, stick a pieces of sausage in the middle of each, and wrap them both up in 30 seconds. Instead, he says thank you, loudly, as if he means it, because the only thing worse than overexcited little Ron is a little Ron who gets sad because he feels unappreciated. Calvin stuffs his napkin in the bag and hands it through the window. Sad Volvo, who has stopped crying at least, takes the bag and then just stares at it. Calvin has a flash of fear, imagining the guy turning to him and telling him some awful secret. My wife left me, my mom died, my kids hate me, I don't like who I am. But after a moment, Sad Volvo shakes his head as if to wake himself up, tosses the Burger Buddy's bag onto the passenger seat, already cluttered with bags from Hardee's and Wendy's and who knows where else, and loudly sucks some snot up his nose before pulling away. The drive-through timer indicates the car sat at the window for 57 seconds. The time on the register 6:02. Only 7 hours and 58 minutes left until he clocks out.
That's awesome. One of the themes of this book, we won't give away too much of the plot, but one of the themes of this book is going from being sort of in the background to being in the front. Maybe even from being sort of a side person to sort of claiming one's destiny as an auteur or something. And now you're somebody, I know this experience. You played drums in a rock band. And being the drummer in a rock band, it's kind of like being the goalie in hockey. Like nobody knows what you look like. You're hidden behind a bunch of equipment, and you're usually only on the highlight films when somebody's scoring a goal on you. So, so you've gone from behind the drums in Uncle Green and 3 Pound Thrill to now reading, and so with such a lovely reading you just gave. First of all, how does that feel?
First of all, I love the hockey goalie analogy, which I haven't heard before, and you're exactly right. If you do your job, no one ever knows exactly what, like no one,
Yeah.
except for the few like goalie obsessives / drumming obsessives who will come up to you and ask you like what kind of bass drum pedal you're using, and I don't really know.
Right.
So it's a perfect analogy. It feels, I mean, not that I'm old hat at this, but this is the third book, so my goal was to publish 3 novels, and so it feels like satisfying in that regard, and to be up front also feels it's kind of satisfying. And I think you probably understand because we also both teach, and so it's not unlike being the front man of a classroom, right, or leading the classroom in a concert. And that also is satisfying. At first it was unnerving because I missed the goalie mask, right?
Right.
And the first reading, I remember I was unsure of what to do, and I decided I would just fake it, which is not unlike playing the drums. And so then that's how I got into it. I like the experience of people actually engaging with me as an individual, which is not something I experienced in the band. It's not like I don't like playing the drums, but this is just a different side of that coin. I mean, it's like you go to the radio station and the drummer is not usually asked any of the questions. Sometimes, unless the question is, "And what do you play?" Then you say you're the drummer.
Right. So, I'm curious. We'll talk about you, and then we'll talk about Cal, the main character and the protagonist of this book. What part of you do you feel gets to be seen as a writer that was sort of like hidden behind your 3 bandmates as a drummer?
I guess it's the thinking part.
Yeah.
Not that you don't think as a drummer, except one of the goals of drumming is actually to think as little as possible.
Yeah.
Right? It's all muscle memory, and if you think too much, you're absolutely screwed. As soon as you try to remember what comes after the second chorus, you realize you've forgotten, and you're doomed. So it's the thinking part. It's the verbalization. I never said anything on stage, except occasionally before the encore, because everybody else thought it was funny, I would be sent out first to thank everybody and then say something.
Right.
So it's the idea part. It's the glimpse into my brain, for better or worse.
Cool. And how much do you feel? I mean, without sort of necessarily drawing a one-to-one correspondence between you and your protagonist, because that's not necessarily the case. But to the extent that you've had that journey, how much of that were you thinking about when you wrote this book? Your journey from drummer to author, and Cal's journey from sort of finding his voice as a songwriter.
I'm going to reveal that I really thought about that very little, because your initial framing is something I hadn't even thought of before. That this theme of moving of daring to move into the spotlight. Because Calvin does initially enjoy the idea that he is not seen, even though he is writing the music. So I think that Calvin's pretty entirely made up, except that now that we're talking about it, it's like, okay, well, I guess there must be some of me in there too. But I find it best when writing, for me anyway, I don't think theme forward or theme first. It's all character driven. So I had the idea of Calvin, and I could see Calvin, and so I just kind of followed him.
That's cool. That sort of leads me to another question I had, which was, in the book, Cal talks about, well, you know, or the narrator describes Cal as somebody who writes songs by starting with a drum loop, and which made instant sense to me, because it gives you kind of a framework.
Yeah.
All three of your books have a very distinct formal kind of framework. So The Weight of Sound is a novel, but each chapter is told from a different character's point of view. Honeybird is like a braided mystery with two main characters pursuing different things that sort of do that. And this book is there are sort of hints in the book that an inspiration for this book might have been Mrs. Dalloway, because it takes place over the course of 24 hours, and it delves into it sort of meanders from present to past tense. And actually, I think Mrs. Dalloway herself even makes an appearance, maybe in this book.
Maybe.
Yeah. And so, or maybe it's her great-granddaughter or something. I'm wondering, so you just said, though, that you start sort of with the characters, and I'm wondering at what point does the sort of drum loop of formal framework sort of come into the process, and maybe you could just talk about how that goes for you.
Yeah, this one is actually different than the first two. So for the first one, I didn't even know I was writing a novel. I thought it was just short stories, but it began to assemble itself I view it as like a concept album, like there's 12 songs and 12 chapters, you know, that it would work that way, and it began to tell a larger story. The second one, I knew there were two characters for whatever reason, but I didn't know what time period it was going to cover, or that they would go back and forth. So in both of those cases, the structure came late. I write out a sequence, I had to start writing scenes and trying to piece them all together. And it wasn't until late in the game that I realized Honeybird was going to alternate and cover 5 months. This one was inspired by Mrs. Dalloway because you remember we had a pandemic and we all hung out on Zoom, and I joined like 72 Zoom book groups because that's how I was surviving. And we read Mrs. Dalloway, which I had never read Virginia Woolf. I was always afraid. I was the one afraid of Virginia Woolf. And it was funnier than I expected, and I liked the one-day format, and I liked that slippage from past to present, because we do that all day long, right? So in the Zoom group, I said, I like this book, but of course, has anyone read Mrs. Dalloway? Like, monetary concerns are not high on Mrs. Dalloway's list, right? Like, there's a crisis involving the dress, and can the maid fix it in time for the party? So I said, what we need is a Mrs. Dalloway, but it's got to be somebody for whom money is like this looming problem. Like I want to see a fast food guy, Mrs. Dalloway. And they all said yes. And I said, oh, that's actually a pretty good idea. Yeah. So in this case, the structure came first.
Great, okay.
And then I saw Calvin, the character. And then it was the rest that filled in later. Like how his life would be set up.
Okay, cool. I'm just kind of nosily curious, did you smile at the moment that when you realized how you could get her into the book?
Yes.
Okay. I love that. So, one of the themes of the book also is getting from exactly what you described, like working a job that just feels like it's going nowhere, and having this super big aspiration. And in order to get from here to there, one needs, as the book sort of riffs on, a plan. And much of what Cal is reckoning with are the trade-offs that one makes along the way, and I'm kind of curious. I would like to hear about how all of that came to you.
The plan in general, and then the trade-offs you have to make along the way?
Any of it, but I am interested in the trade-offs because that feels like very relevant to anybody here who's like an artist, or like yes, this is Brooklyn, so
we all are, right? I mean,
yeah.
Who comes to a bookstore on a Friday night, right? I mean,
There's typewriters on the stage,
Yeah, I mean, it's very. All of my books, I'm realizing definitely. I mean, they all have musicians, but even the next one, which is working title, No Musicians, because I'm determined not to have any this time. But it's about a writer, so it's still got the creative type. It's people for whom making sense of all of this is done through some creative act. And as you continue to try to find a way to keep finding the time to do that creative act, yes, there are a series of trade-offs you have to make along the way, and it's almost like every day a new trade-off is presented, and which one are you like, when are you going to keep X amount over here on the creative thing and sacrifice this other thing? Like, I mean, he's working at a Burger Buddies,
right?
Because he gets nights off and he gets weekends off, and so that is the trade-off he's making. In exchange, he has this job, in a uniform, pushing food out a window. The plan, I think, helps him make those trade-offs. Like, I think the two work in combination.
Yeah.
If you have this plan, it reassures you that the trade-off is, like, you're not going to be necessarily little Ron and really excited about this job. You will have moved on, hopefully.
Do you, so I'm kind of curious, I would like to hear how you, as a musician, as a writer, navigated those trade-offs. In a band, you've got, in your band, 3 other people, and there's only so much of anything that can go, that you can get. It all gets sort of divided up. Whereas as a writer, you get you're sort of everything, but then you lose out on the collaborative energy, maybe. But I know that there are other sort of aspects of the trade-off there, and I'm also kind of curious how you navigated earlier on in your life, before you were a professor, how you navigated all of those trade-offs, and especially if there are memorable ones that you may really like, I'm just going to have to cut this loose, or this is more money over here, but it's going to eat me alive, or something like that.
I mean, not unlike Calvin, I was offered like this chance to be management at Burger King, which I did work at. I guess that's also a trade-off, like, Burger King for years. And I couldn't do it. That was a trade-off for, like, it would be more money, but, like,
right.
Now what do you do? It's not like I worked the drive-thru. It's like I'm a manager at Burger King. Like, it couldn't quite, not there's anything wrong with that. If there's any managers at Burger King out here or anywhere else, God bless you. That was a trade-off I couldn't make. It's interesting that I think you also make trade-offs within the band itself, right? I mean, as drummers, we have certain goals or ideas, but we are always going to be deferring to the songwriter, which is just as it should be. But it's certainly a matter of, if we think of trade-offs as also like an expression of control, like how much control are you willing to give up to pursue this thing. And so Calvin has trade-offs he's willing to make to continue to be able to make music and just have enough money to live. But musically, there are some trade-offs he is not willing to make, and that kind of becomes the big, in this book, in this one day, the big decision that is going to await him.
So, one feature of all 3 of your novels is that each of them have an original soundtrack, and you write with various collaborators all of the songs. And I'm kind of curious, you you didn't. How many of the songs? Well, describe the difference between this and being the drummer for Uncle Green 3 Pound Thrill.
So I don't write music, but I would write the words. The words are much easier for me to write when I'm imagining I'm writing not as me, but as Calvin. So these are Calvin's lyrics. And so that's the little twist my brain makes, because I have to imagine that I am him and what would he write in this scenario. And then I find collaborators to write the music. I didn't know there were going to be 9 songs. I knew of a couple of key songs. There's a band Calvin doesn't like, and they end every set with a kind of an ode to Heineken beer, and he hates this song, My Dear Friend, Mr. Heineken. And I knew that would be in there. And I knew the title of the first song, the first original song he writes, and I knew what the title would be. But it's interesting. I'm not sure whether this is what you've asked now. I'm just riffing on the interplay between the two.
Yeah.
Because the songs, as they begin to emerge, can then come back and change the book.
Okay, got it. I was curious about that. So you don't just write the book and then write the songs, or write the songs and then write the book.
No, it's working. The book comes first, and again, since I read out of sequence, I have placeholders where I know songs are going to be, and I asked then the collaborator, in this case Jeff, my friend Jeff, wrote this music for Mr. Heineken. I said, so here's the chorus. It's got to be a song that my hero hates, but everybody else loves. So it's got to be like one of those, which is a very hard brief to tick, but he did it. And then the first song that Calvin writes with his friend Grady is Open Me Up. And I had the chorus, and I sent it off to somebody else wrote the Calvin music. And then when I could hear the music, I can then go back in and sharpen the descriptions of music in the book. So it's like the music doesn't exist without the book, but then the music comes along and helps shape the book later on.
Got it. Okay, great.